Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening. My name is Nick Ishmael Perkins, and I'm a senior consultant here at the International Science Council. Welcome to the final webinar in our short series exploring the intersection of science communication and trust in science. You can watch the other webinars, which have been recorded and will be posted with links in the chat here. I'm pleased to say that today's webinar, Building Special Projects with Wikipedia, has been co-convened with the Wikimedia Foundation as part of the Public Value of Science program here at the ISC. As we know, Wikipedia has become the Encyclopedia Britannica of our time, and you can carry it around in your hands, returning at the top of searches on just about any topic anywhere in the world. Before I get into the substance of the discussion today, though, just a few bits of housekeeping. First, you will have noticed that the session is being recorded and will be available on our website afterwards. Also, we will try to post links that are referenced during our discussion in the chat so that you can access them. And speaking of chat, if you have any questions, because we will have time for questions, you can put them in Q&A. You can also use the chat for your questions, but be sure to label it clearly so that we can see that this is a question. Also, feel free, of course, to share your reflections with others who are listening in. And use the chat, of course, to let us know where you're joining from around the world. It's always good to know that we are reaching an audience globally. Now, the structure of today's webinar. We have 1 hour, and we will start with a presentation of around 15 minutes from our guest, who will showcase her work on Wikipedia, particularly around COVID. Then she and I will have a bit of a discussion for about 20 minutes with some follow-up questions. And finally, we will open it up for you, the audience, for around 25 minutes for your own questions and reflections. Now, we know that most social media and digital platforms allow a decentralized model of content creation. We also heard in our last webinar, which was also co-convened by the Wikimedia Foundation, that Wikipedia has a somewhat different business model to most other platforms. Wiki relies on a community of editors committed to the dissemination of knowledge and the provision of information for the public good. Today, we are going to explore the relationship between the platform and this community of editors with a view to understanding how this relationship works in practice. Does it deliver on the outcomes it promises for social good? And what challenges remain for Wikipedia and organized science? Now, my guest today is Dr. Nathan Hussain, Hussein, who is a medical doctor and a researcher with a PhD in clinical neuroscience from the University of Gothenburg. Dr. Hussein has been a Wikimedia volunteer for over a decade, who's contributed in English and Malayalam languages to Wikipedia, Wikidata, Wikimedia Commons, and MetaWiki. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, Dr. Hussein wrote, updated, and translated dozens of Wikipedia articles to ensure reliable information about the pandemic is available for everyone. She also recently launched a project to improve information about vaccine safety topics on Wikipedia. And her collaborations with Wikimedians around the world is one of the many reasons she received a 2020 Women in Open Source Academic Award. Welcome, Meta. Can you tell us a bit about your project? I know that you have a presentation to share with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nick, for inviting me to this esteemed platform, as well as for the introduction. Yes, a little bit about my project. I work mostly on medicine-related articles on English language Wikipedia. So I usually respond to emergencies. So COVID-19 pandemic was an emergency where we required massive amount of information to be up on Wikipedia. I also wrote articles related to vaccine safety. I also ran a project for mapping the knowledge gaps related to vaccine safety. And now I'm working on knowledge gaps related to women's health. And these days, debates related to abortion are very much prominent in news, especially in the US. So it was then that I decided that I will work more on women's health. So I choose topics from the spectrum of medicine, but whatever is more important for today is what I do. So it's mostly emergencies that I respond to, and I write articles fast, and I mobilize communities and map knowledge gaps.
Yes, okay, and that's very useful context. I know that you've also written for the Huffington Post in the past, for instance. Now, I know that you have a presentation that you've prepared that you're going to share with us, so I hand the floor over to you.
Thank you. Yes, yeah. I will start by talking a little bit about myself and how I started editing Wikipedia. I started editing Wikipedia in 2010 when I was a medical student in India. Editing Wikipedia is quite simple and straightforward if you want to try it out for yourself. You can edit a Wikipedia page by clicking on the edit button on the top right of the Wikipedia page. Once you do that, the editing interface will open and you can then add content there and save the page. Edits that you make on most language editions of Wikipedia, including English, do not have to pass through any review. So which means that whatever you write there becomes live on Wikipedia instantly. If you are interested, you can also create an account on Wikipedia, which makes it easier to track your contributions. So I invite all the listeners of this talk to try editing Wikipedia if you haven't already. There are always a lot of topic areas and missing knowledge that you can contribute to and you can add on Wikipedia. Next slide, please. From there, I will go further and talk about the COVID-19 related content on Wikipedia. It was on 31st December 2019 that suspicions about a cluster of previously unknown pneumonia cases were reported from China. Just 5 days after the disease was detected, the English Wikipedia article about COVID-19 first appeared. This was on 5th January 2020, and this slide shows the first version of Wikipedia article about COVID-19 as it was seen on 5th January. It was very small with basic information in it. Next slide, please. Since then, this article has undergone major expansion, and it now gives a comprehensive overview of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is how the lead section of the article looks like now. The article has been edited by over 3,500 editors, including healthcare professionals and researchers. It has gathered over 75 million page views so far, and half of the traffic came during the first 4 months of the pandemic in 2020. Like any other Wikipedia article, this article has also undergone a series of additions, deletions, and even name changes since its creation. Over 2,000 Wikipedia volunteers are watching this article, which means that they get notified if any new changes are made to this article. In order to add content to this or any other Wikipedia article, one has to comply to the policies and guidelines of Wikipedia. There are also inbuilt tools that allow for flagging vandalism on Wikipedia articles, because those articles which are viewed by more people are also likely to have more vandalism on it. So there are volunteers who are watching these articles for vandalism. And this particular article about COVID-19 pandemic is semi-protected, which means that only logged in editors with some previous activity on Wikipedia are allowed to edit it. So in short, the collaboration between volunteers, abidance to Wikipedia's policies, use of Wikipedia tools, and adherence to certain established practices on Wikipedia help to increase the reliability of this article and keep this article up to date. Next slide, please. When a topic area grows, it becomes important that editors working on the topic should coordinate and communicate with each other. When such coordination is required between editors working on a particular topic, Wikipedians usually create wiki projects. Wiki projects are special pages where everyone interested in the topic come together to work on that subject area. Any Wikipedia editor can create a wiki project. One does not need to seek approval from anywhere to create a wiki project. Once you have created a wiki project, you can spread the word by writing on notice boards on Wikipedia, talk pages of editors interested in the topic, and social media pages related to Wikipedia. You don't necessarily have to be a part of a wiki project to be able to edit articles related to that topic. So you can write on any article without being a member of any wiki project. For now, over 250 Wikipedians are members of Wiki Project COVID-19 in English language. There is also a larger wiki project called the Wiki Project Medicine that has all medicine related articles under its scope. Similarly, we also have wiki projects for, say, physics, military history, women scientists, and so forth. So the wiki project for COVID-19 was started in March 2020, and it keeps track of the articles related to COVID-19. And this wiki project has a section on trusted external sources where from COVID-19 data can be extracted. There is also a page that gives information about if an article related to COVID-19 has been created, a new article has been created, an article has been tagged for deletion, or if any article needs improvement. So everything can be seen in one place. The wiki project is also a useful place for an editor to come and learn about what is happening around COVID-19 on Wikipedia. Although there is a wealth of information about COVID-19 on Wikipedia, there is also so much more to be done. The pages of Wiki Project COVID-19 contain lists of missing articles and lists of reliable resources to create these articles. Participation from experts in COVID-19 will be very helpful here in assessing existing articles for quality, mapping the existing COVID-19 knowledge gaps on Wikipedia, and finding reliable resources for mapping these, for bridging these knowledge gaps. Discussions about important aspects related to COVID-19, such as consensus regarding various treatments for COVID-19, for example, can also be followed from the pages of the Wiki project. So the Wiki project also gives updates about some discussions that are going on in the top pages of relevant articles related to COVID-19. Next slide, please. This screenshot, it is a part of one of the nav boxes related to COVID-19. A nav box is a template that lists several related pages together in a structured way. This or a related nav box is visible in most of the COVID-19 related articles in the bottom if you are viewing Wikipedia in desktop view. But a large majority of Wikipedia readers will never see this template because they are reading Wikipedia using their mobile devices, and nav boxes like this are not made visible in mobile view. As of now, there are around 4,500 articles under the scope of Wiki Project COVID-19, including articles about the COVID-19 pandemic in various countries, the impact of pandemic on various aspects of life, articles surrounding vaccination for COVID-19, drugs and health issues surrounding COVID-19, etc. English Wikipedia also has articles about institutions and people that are involved in combating COVID-19. We also have general articles such as impact of COVID-19 pandemic on, say, education, and very specific articles such as impact of COVID-19 on abortion in the United States. There are also articles like Wikipedia's response to COVID-19 and list of unproven methods against COVID-19. Wikipedia has also articles about how the pandemic affects vulnerable populations such as children, people with cancer, people with mental health issues, and pregnant people. Next slide, please. One of the main problems that the internet is facing today is misinformation. Misinformation has become so rampant in the context of coronavirus that the World Health Organization called it an infodemic. Misinformation could be in the form of conspiracy theories, propaganda, scams, or fake news. This is the Wikipedia article for listing misinformation related to COVID-19. This kind of documentation of misinformation not only helps people to understand if a piece of social media news is fake or not, but this article is also good material for researchers to understand what kind of fake news circulates in different countries, because this article is present in multiple languages. Although Wikipedians have done a good job of documenting misinformation, what we see documented here is only a tip of the iceberg. A lot of instances of misinformation go unreported by the media, and I think that it is important for the media to not only share good information, but also call out misinformation so that this information could be used as secondary sources to be added and added to Wikipedia as references. Also, when a corpus of information on Wikipedia is growing so fast, it becomes hard to make sure that the information is reliable. New researches are coming out every day, and information is changing very rapidly. Sometimes conflicting conclusions come from different studies. In such cases, it is sometimes important to present only the information that is backed by the strongest scientific evidence. At other times, we will also need to just present the studies that have shown conflicting results and present both sides of the conflicting research findings. So this kind of decisions are usually taken on top pages of respective articles, where Wikipedia editors come together and discuss what is the best way to present a particular information on a Wikipedia page. So to be able to weigh the evidences in a scientifically accurate way, one needs to be an expert in the subject. We now need more experts on Wikipedia than ever due to the changing nature of the information related to science, related to most aspects of science, not only COVID-19. We need them because we need to curate large volume of research findings that is being published every day and present it in simple language for the general public to read and understand. The media sometimes gives a distorted picture of research findings. Some research findings are described as groundbreaking or revolutionary by the media, but in fact, results from isolated single-center trials cannot be as rosy or as groundbreaking as it is described by the media. So this is where experts have to step in and make sure that the research findings are presented accurately on Wikipedia. On English Wikipedia, we do have healthcare professionals and academics editing articles, but I think we need the involvement of more experts, particularly on medical articles related to COVID-19 for careful fact-checking and synthesizing existing evidence. Next slide, please. There are also several challenges and gaps that we face as Wikipedia editors. I will enumerate a few of them. One of the challenges is related to rich media. In my experience of editing and reading COVID-19 articles, I have seen that they are rich with graphs, but there are very few photographs and videos in these articles. A very large corpus of media related to COVID-19 are available on the internet, but a large majority of them are not compatible for use on Wikipedia because they are protected by strict copyrights. More images should be shared in licenses compatible to Wikipedia so that they can be remixed and freely reused on Wikipedia. Similarly, we need more diversity of images on Wikipedia. Approximately 70% of the healthcare workers globally are women, and yet most of the available media related to COVID-19 on Wikipedia's media repository show men. We have research publications on Wikipedia's gender gap in terms of text, but sparse data is available about the gender gap in terms of images and other media. So we need to also have researchers who quantify the magnitude of the diversity gap in terms of Wikipedia's images to be able to close it. And it is also well known that Wikipedia has a global north bias. The article about the COVID-19 pandemic in the United States on English Wikipedia is 5 times bigger than the article about the pandemic in Yemen. So whenever country-wise information is present in an article about global issues, it is more likely that the information and perspectives come from sources released from countries of the global north. There is also an issue of language diversity. Wikipedia has around 300 language editions, and an article about COVID-19 exists in 187 language editions of Wikipedia. While this is an impressive achievement, this statistic also means that there are over 100 language editions without an article about COVID-19. And the total number of languages in the world is estimated to be upwards of 6,000. And yet Wikipedia is available only in 300 languages. So in order for Wikipedia to become truly diverse in terms of language, there is still a lot of work left to be done. Next slide, please. These are my attributions. Thank you for listening. And I look forward to have a nice conversation with you, Nick, and also the rest of the participants who are listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Netha. That was fascinating. Lots of questions. I'm just here trying to organize them in my head. I think what I'm going to do is to start by asking you some fairly specific, granular, and quite practical questions.
Yeah.
And then I think we can sort of step back a bit and ask some broader questions around Wikimedia as a platform and around the relationship between science communication and science engagement and digital platforms and so on. So the first thing that you said, which I was really intrigued by, because you say, what you're trying to do with Wikipedia, it strikes me, is to get the balance between accessibility and credibility.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so as you described it, you say, actually, in fact, in principle, anyone can go on and they can start to edit. But in reality, there is a check and balance system there, as I understand it. And I'm also reflecting on my own sort of rather amateurish attempts to edit stuff on Wikipedia. But you say that the articles, as I understand it, within the Wiki project, the COVID Wiki project, are locked in some way. And that there's limited access for editors. Have I understood that correctly? And second is the first bit of the question. Yeah. And then the second bit is how, if you were, sort of listening to this and thinking, yes, I'd like to do a project, but I'd like to have a little bit of control over who goes on and edits and so on, how would you be able to get that kind of locked or semi-locked status for your article?
Yeah, to answer the first question, not all articles under the Wiki project COVID-19 are locked. It's only the very prominent articles that are, subject to vandalism. And this decision is taken by a group of editors together. It's not just one person who is deciding that this article should be semi-protected or protected. So this is not the case with only COVID-19 articles, but say the article about US politics, perhaps the article about abortion is semi-protected. I don't know. The article about Barack Obama or Donald Trump or Biden is also locked or semi-protected. So this is something Wikipedia editors do so as to avoid, frequent vandalism and to avoid people from changing this article frequently with, false information. But there are articles related to, say, which are, say, World Health's response to COVID-19, which is not semi-protected. So anyone could still go in and edit them. So it is the community that takes the decision as to which article should be semi-protected, and there should be valid grounds for why that article should be semi-protected. And it is an administrator on Wikipedia who ultimately does semi-protection. An administrator is a person who has some extra privileges and rights and who has been on the Wikimedia projects for much longer time and who have had good standing in the community. So there are very few people who have the rights to semi-protect an article, but it also comes after a long discussion with the community members.
Sure. And is it working for you, the settings that you have for semi-protection for the COVID articles? Are you happy?
I am not an admin on Wikipedia, but I have participated in some discussions regarding semi-protecting some of the articles. And yes, I think that this mechanism really works because it is a pain for volunteers to always have to check some articles for vandalism and to restore the article to its previous version. Every time a vandalism is detected. So we need some kind of checks and balances, especially for these prominent articles which are viewed by very many people. So it's only there that we use semi-protection as a tool, but otherwise most other articles, I would say more than 90% of articles on Wikipedia would not be semi-protected, and anybody can go ahead and edit them.
Okay, and I want to acknowledge actually Doug, who has provided us with some links which I think explain this process. So that's very welcome. As Gabriella says from ISC, feel free to post your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A. And I see that we already have a question there, which I will come to in a bit. The other thing I want to ask actually is, again, thinking about the articles that you described, you said so far the page has, and I think this is the main COVID article, has 25 million views. Did I get that right?
25 million, that is correct. Yeah.
And then the COVID Wiki project has 4,500 articles, I mean, which is very impressive. I mean, on one hand, not at all surprising, because as you say, we do have now as a collective civilization the capacity to generate vast amounts of information. So 4,500, we should probably not be surprised by that, but it is obviously a substantial number. But then the question that I'm thinking of, again, if I'm sitting here as a researcher and listening to this and thinking, oh, that's really interesting. And I'm wondering, do you need to have a minimum level of a kind of a critical mass of interests before you might start a wiki project or something? I mean, because I'm just thinking, maybe some researchers are thinking, well, I'm not sure that I'll be able to generate something that's going to attract 25 million viewers, or could actually lead to 45,000 articles. Do you have any reflections on that in terms of this idea of a critical mass, a certain level of critical mass?
I think so, because wiki projects are meant to be points, hubs for collaboration for people. So if there are no people for collaborating, there is not much point in having a wiki project. So this is somewhere where you attract collaboration. But I understand that when Wiki Project COVID-19 was started, there were fewer than 10 people who first joined on the first few days. And then there were like massive amounts of then this information was spread in various Wikipedia notice boards. It was spread in some social media channels. We also have Telegram groups for Wikipedia editors. It was spread there. And a lot of other editors also joined. So to begin with, it is true that fewer people joined first, and they do some of the work in the Wiki project, and then people just come in afterwards. So if somebody is hesitating to start a wiki project, I would definitely ask them to go on and start it, because you never know how big it will get in the future. So if you know like 4 or 5 other editors who are interested in the same topic, you could just start a wiki project and see how much engagement it gathers. And there are also inactive wiki projects. So some wiki projects do not need to be active for a very long time, and they are concerning events that happen at a particular time period, and they don't have to be active anymore. So there are inactive wiki projects as well.
Okay, I mean, this is very useful because Marta Entradas actually did a piece of research looking at what she calls the meso level at which most science communication and research communication takes place. And effectively what that means is that a lot of this is happening through multinational and certainly multi-institutional collaborations. And it strikes me that that provides a very natural institutional context for the kind of collaboration that you're describing actually around the wiki project. But I guess the point here is not just that everybody needs to have a wiki project, but maybe it is possible there is no commitment, as I understand it. You can start with an article and then you can see how it evolves and so on. But it certainly strikes me that the current format for a lot of research funding lends itself naturally to that kind of wiki project modality.
Yeah, I think we have had this wiki projects from the very beginning. There are wiki projects dating back to 2006, 2005. Wiki Project Medicine, for instance, was started somewhere around 2006, 2007. It is an umbrella of a lot of other smaller wiki projects in it, and it has all the medicine articles on Wikipedia under its scope. So there are much larger wiki projects, there are smaller wiki projects, there are wiki projects which are inactive, there are wiki projects that concern, say women scientists, for example, or military history, or so geography, physics. So So yeah, so a group of editors decide that now it's time for having a wiki project, and then they start collaborating. So this kind of collaboration, I think Wikipedia has had it before other organizations and institutions started thinking about it, actually.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that there are a number of resources in the Wikipedian community, like Wikimed, is it? I think it's called. And so I'm just wondering, so there are two things that occurred to me. First of all, are all scientific disciplines represented to some extent? Do you know whether or not, because you could imagine medicine is quite, be quite easy, you could imagine, to generate quite a lot of public interest around topics that relate to medicine, and the various, associated disciplines. But what about the social sciences, say philosophy or geography, stuff like that? Are they also communities or resources? Do you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any areas then that are underrepresented that you're aware of?
Underrepresentation, I think, yeah, I will start by saying about other wiki projects. Yes, there are wiki projects for, I think, most of the main topic areas that you can imagine. There has been interest from volunteers to create wiki projects related to them. And there are also several Wikipedia articles related to, say, geography, physics, mathematics, or whatever, computer science. So take any topic, there will be some article about that. But on the other hand, we also have several knowledge gaps. And these knowledge gaps, they are mostly on, what I call as second level articles. So while there is an article about, say, COVID-19, there might not be an article about impact of COVID-19 on mental health in Indians, for example. So when you go to that kind of granular level, or you go down and deep into a topic, then perhaps knowledge, there are missing pieces, and there is more knowledge that you can generate there. So while I would say that all these articles about bigger phenomenon have already been written in a very good way, we still have to go one level down or two levels down to see what it means for a specific group of population or a specific topic area for which affects only a minority of people, or how it affects perhaps an indigenous group, how it perhaps affects a small cultural minority, and so forth. Then we also have gaps in language. I talked in the presentation, I talked about what gaps we do have in terms of language in COVID-19 related articles, but we do need more people writing articles in their native languages, languages other than English or the most Western European languages, on Wikipedia. Yes. To populate them. Yeah.
And I want to come back to that issue of the diversity of languages in a second. But again, I want to thank Doug and I hope I'm not mispronouncing his name, Theas, who have given us some tips basically for how we might be able to sort of see something of the directory of what's available. Yes. Now, I want to go to a question that Hamid has posted, and in fact, there are two questions in his question, and I want to just pick out one part, which again, because I want to start, as I say, by focusing on the granularity around a specific example of COVID before we step back. And this is why I want us to kind of come back again to the question of language diversity, because I think this is a broader issue. Yes. But Hamid has raised something, I think, which is quite specific here. How much recent publicized US classified information about China manipulation is credited and used by Wikipedia and projects? Yes. And so what, and I use his term here about China manipulation sort of advisedly, but I think the point is, for instance, how do you because it's a very politicized area, how are you dealing with sort of deciphering what is politicization from what might be certified science? You've said before that there is a group of editors who might meet to make a decision about how they present some of the science, because, as we know, science is about the incremental diminishment of uncertainty. And so sometimes it's not very clear, it's not very easy to make a declaration about what exactly the science is saying. So I'd like to hear a little bit about how you've applied that in the context of, for instance, the relationship with China and information that's coming out of China, or about China's role in this, and more broadly how that works with this community of this meeting of editors.
Regarding the China question, I'm not exactly sure because I haven't participated in any discussions related to that so far, but I can answer in general about how the collective consensus works on Wikipedia. What happens is that Wikipedia has 5 pillars. So the 5 main principles Wikipedia is founded on, and one of them is called the neutral point of view. So you have to always present a particular topic within neutral point of view with due weight. So if a particular perspective does not have sufficient weight as the other perspective, you have to present it in a way that the perspective with higher weight is represented with much more certainty on Wikipedia. So, and how do you decide this? You use this, like I said earlier, there are talk pages for every Wikipedia page, and you go there and you discuss your perspective, you look for reliable sources. Wikipedia also has great policies related to reliable sources. So what counts as a reliable source and what doesn't count as a reliable source is documented very well there. And when it comes to medicine, we also have additional criteria. And to begin with, we only use systematic reviews or meta-analysis as references to a Wikipedia article. And in cases where these do not exist, then we could go to original research, but then that is also debatable, and you will have to specify. If somebody asks you why this has been, why you have added an original research to a given article, then you will have to give, an explanation as to why meta-analysis or systematic review is missing and why you need to push this point of view. So, so it is the volunteers and the policies on Wikipedia that helps it maintain a neutral point of view and keep it away from, politicized version of science and actual science.
Okay, and I see Sarah here has posted a link actually about as a guideline for reliable sources on medical topics. Are they similar guidelines that relate to other topics apart from medicine?
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, there is the whole of Wikipedia has its own guidelines. Then we also have guidelines for biographies of living persons. So you cannot write libellous content on a person who is actually living now. And you have to follow very specific rules when you write biographies of living people. This is something I know related to another topic.
Yeah. Okay. And I see Sarah has posted here some guidelines for reliable sources. I guess what it's niggling me in the back of my head is actually, as we know, medicine is a very, it's very obviously contentious. And I'm just wondering whether there is equal weight of, should we say, safeguarding around other scientific areas as well. And that's a question that's kind of, we can see, because the digital harms that can be presented by in the fields of medicine is very obvious. And so I'm curious about, how that might apply actually across other sciences. But I want to, so I see there are other questions that are coming in for you, and I'm going to turn to them in a second, but I have 2 questions for you, actually, Netha, before we return. The first is about the language question, okay? Now, how would you propose that we address the issue of language diversity and northern bias? Is it possible, actually, to do this? You talk about the 3,000 languages, actually. I mean, yeah, is that even possible? What are your thoughts?
I think it is definitely possible. I mean, we are striving to make Wikipedia as diverse as possible. And one is in terms of participation and the other is in terms of content. In terms of participation, we conduct editathons. Editathons are events where newcomers and experienced editors come and sit together and then they write their Wikipedia articles. So this is a very popular method that we use in different parts of the world. We have also groups such as the art and feminism editathons. They conduct editathons, regular editathons at the same place every month or so, and write articles about women artists, for example. So these are some events where we try to introduce Wikipedia to diverse audience and bring them to Wikipedia and make them long-term editors. There is also a project called Wikipedia Tea House. This is where newcomers can come and ask questions related to how to edit a particular article, and then they get help from there. So we always try to recruit new editors and retain existing editors as much as possible, particularly from the global south. And we also have conferences related to different themes. We have conferences related to education called the EduWiki conference. In April, we are going to have Wiki Conference India for Indian editors writing on Wikipedia. And there is also a lot of research going on by the Wikipedia's research team, which looks at which has created a knowledge gap taxonomy. It has created a taxonomy surrounding what gaps exist and what kind of gaps exist on Wikipedia when it comes to diversity. And they are trying to map all these gaps. So there's a research team working about, saying how much, what percent, for example, you have the question like, what percentage of biography articles are women? It's only 18%. We know that because the research team has got that data. So the research team, the volunteers themselves, the outreach group, they are trying to they are trying to bridge the participant gap on Wikipedia. And as for the content gap, I think once you try and bridge the participant gap, the content gap will also be bridged to some extent, because when you have people with diverse perspectives editing Wikipedia articles, they bring in their perspectives, and you can have a diverse perspective on the articles, on the content of the articles as well. It will reflect in the content if you have a diverse participant group. Then we also have projects going on which map the knowledge gaps in several Wikipedia languages. For example, I work on mapping knowledge gaps related to women health. So once the knowledge gaps have been mapped, now it's much easier for people to know that this is a knowledge gap and it could be bridged in this way. And we also have projects where Wikipedia editors are given access to resources which are otherwise paywalled. So if you are an editor with certain amount of edits already or with a good standing, then you can get access to some paywalled resources or subscription-based resources, and you can use them to write articles on Wikipedia. So that even if you come from a economic status without much access to scientific resources or certain specific resources, you are given that kind of access as a Wikipedian to write Wikipedia articles. We also have collaboration with universities. There is a project called there is a group of people who are teachers, who are academicians. They work with universities, and writing a Wikipedia article is given as an assignment, as a course assignment to students in the universities. So they choose an article, they adopt an article, and then they work on the article during the course of their semester. And in the end, they get credits for improving a particular Wikipedia article. So these are all the projects. Yeah.
Okay. So just very quickly on that last point, is there a particular link or something if you're interested, if you're in a university and you're interested in becoming part of that program?
Yes, I can find it out and send it out here if nobody else is putting that.
I mean, I appreciate it. It's difficult for you to look for it right now, but my colleagues in ISC behind the scenes are looking right now. We'll see. Yes. But I was also very heartened to hear that some of the efforts, this campaign for diversity, is also acknowledging the very real structural inequalities.
Yes.
Because of course the digital divide is part of this, right? When you have individuals in some countries that have several devices that provide online access, and in other countries where in fact the cost of accessing, both in terms of time and effort and money, is much higher, invariably you're going to end up seeing, you're going to see some of the inequality in, as you put it, participation and content, but it's interesting to hear you articulate the theory of change effectively that Wikimedia is pursuing around this. That's very, very interesting, very helpful. I am now going to go to some of the questions that we have online, because there are other questions I have, but I think I'm going to start with Olga, who asked, I think, a question that's on all of our minds. Have you faced anything that looked like organized anti-science opposition? And indeed, this is really what we would consider disinformation, where in fact it's a considered deliberate attempt to misrepresent or abuse the global scientific consensus. And so if you have experienced that, what did it look like and what did it do?
Yeah, I can talk about an incident. It's not a series of incidents that happened between perhaps 2010 and 2015. I observed this incident. I was not actually a part of combating this. This was concerning, showing that yoga was a particular branch of yoga was very good for you health-wise. So there was an organized group who was trying to make deliberate edits on yoga related articles showing that this particular branch of yoga devised by a particular yogi from India was having more health benefits than it actually has. So they also had their own, publications published in certain predatory journals, which showed, with their results, and they use these results to, illustrate as references to illustrate that this particular yoga is much more superior than what it used to be. And I think when Wikipedia editors found out about this, they followed up on these edits, and most of these edits were reverted. And right now, I think there are no traces of that kind of misinformation related to yoga. There has also been efforts from alternative medicine practitioners to push their point of view, saying that these are completely scientific. In India, where I come from, the Homeopaths Association gave a petition to the Supreme Court of India saying that the Wikipedia article related to homeopathy is not correct. And in India, they would like for the article to be displayed in the way that they desire, because in India, homeopathy is an approved practice of medicine. So this petition, it could not stand in the Supreme Court. Finally, they had to, Supreme Court said that this is not in their jurisdiction to answer that question. So this failed. So there are organized efforts within Wikipedia and outside Wikipedia through courts of justice to try to, change the content. And editors are usually aware of this, and then they try, the editors, most of the editors on Wikipedia who have a lot of experience dealing with these, they safeguard articles from this kind of vandalism. But what we see, what we see is only the most prominent articles. There could be articles out there which are not so prominent, which do not hit so many eyeballs, where people make subtle changes so as to change perspectives of people who are reading them. For example, I started an article about the World Health Organization's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and there were deliberate efforts from people trying to add advertisements of their own products saying that they are approved by the WHO. And I found that out after a couple of weeks. So for a couple of weeks, it stood on the article. And this kind of articles do not gather so much eyeballs. And that is why there is a chance that these misinformation stay there for much longer periods. But when it comes to, articles that are viewed by a lot of people, we have much lesser misinformation and organized disinformation campaigns. And this has become more and more true these days, because now we have, established tools and guidelines and practices to tackle this kind of organized disinformation, which was not true earlier in 2010 or 2015.
I have to admit that actually the last webinar that we had, we spoke to some, a couple of researchers, one from Hackers and one actually from Wikimedia's own research group, about developing tools that allow them to monitor more carefully for those kind of campaigns. And that's fascinating in itself. I see Doug has actually also shared a case study actually about Ayurveda, which I can imagine would be fascinating, because what you have here is the scientific consensus up against other systems, and whether or not we would call them knowledge systems, but certainly other cultural discourse, areas of cultural discourse, and that must be a fascinating sort of conflict in a community, on a platform that depends on mobilized communities. Traditional medicine, as it's called, yes. I mean, of course, in Africa, we have a similar thing, traditional medicine, which is a broad area of practice across the sub-Saharan Africa. That's interesting. I want to go on to Hamid, who asked a question. We are dealing with politicized science and biases, intervening with correct public scientific awareness. And then he and the second question, as I said, that's implicit in his intervention here, which is, how reliable is Wikipedia? Because I know we've talked about the various efforts to monitor and to try to ensure credibility, but I mean, how confident would you feel? Should I be confident if in referring my mother, for instance, to Wikipedia, if she wants to find a reference on something, to understand what it is? And that's, I mean, I say obviously medicine is a very obvious area, but I'm not only thinking about articles related to medicine. What are your thoughts?
Yes, Wikipedia is a reflection of the world. So it doesn't create any original research. It just reflects what kind of information is available out there, and it curates all that information and puts in a way that people without any specialized knowledge can read and understand. So when you read Wikipedia, I think it is the first place of reference that you can go to. You can go there, and if you do not know anything about, say, rocket science, Wikipedia could be the first place where you can gather some perspective about that particular topic. And you have to always cross-check it with the references that you have got at the bottom. So you read something, there is always a reference which backs up that particular statement. You could go click that and go there and go to the actual reliable reference. So Wikipedia is a condensation. Yeah.
Right, Nathan, but I was going to say it's interesting because, again, what we were talking about last webinar was that actually about 1% of the readers on Wikipedia actually follow up with any of those references. So most of the time people are going and they are just trusting that what they can read in about 5 minutes, in fact, 5 minutes would be a long time to spend on an article, I think, no matter how long it is. What they're thinking is that what they can read in about 30 seconds is going to provide them with something factual.
Yeah.
And is that a reasonable assumption?
Yes. Oh, in that case, I'll have to go back to a research article which compared Encyclopedia Britannica with Wikipedia. And they chose 50 or so articles from both the encyclopedias, and they put them together and looked for errors. And it showed the results from, it was a Nature publication from 2005, I think. It showed that when it comes to accuracy, both Encyclopedia Britannica and English Wikipedia are quite similar. There were no statistically significant differences. So these were 50, but on the other hand, these 50 articles were the articles which existed on Encyclopedia Britannica, which means that they are written on, like, quite prominent topics, such as perhaps, say, stroke or, Alzheimer's disease or COVID-19, which many people read on Wikipedia, and which are likely to be more reliable. But on the other hand, if you go deeper and you go and have a look at articles about very specific topics which do not gather so many editors' attention, it is likely that there is misinformation or disinformation which has crept in to those articles. So you can read a Wikipedia article with a certain amount of reliability when it comes to articles that has gathered so many revisions, so many editors' input, and so many readers. But on the other hand, when it comes to smaller articles, the reliability is not as good.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and I can see that's a fair reflection. To me, though, this raises, of course, an interesting question, because how concerned are you as a researcher and a medical practitioner about this?
About
the asymmetry in safeguarding. Where actually prominent articles obviously are very well edited, very carefully monitored, but less prominent topics are less carefully monitored and edited. Is this a bit, yeah, how much of a concern is it for you as a
I
medical
think
practitioner?
for me personally, it's a very big concern, and that is why I work on these smaller articles to make sure that they are also reliable. When it came to Wiki Project COVID-19, I rarely edited those big articles which already had so many other editors participating. I wrote all these, what I call the satellite articles, which are about, the impact of COVID-19 on special population groups, say COVID-19 in pregnancy or COVID-19 in people with mental health issues and so forth. So my personal mission is to look at these, secondary articles that revolve around, the primary article, and and make sure that these articles also have, good references and they are not vandalized and so forth. So personally, I am very concerned, but there are also other editors who work on these, these prominent articles and, make smaller changes there, while I make bigger changes on, these smaller articles. Yeah.
Okay. And then I want to go to the question from Corrado. Again, apologies if I've mispronounced the name. Are there recommendations or suggestions on how to encourage people to share more images on Wikimedia Commons? And they go on to make the point that they think that Creative Commons licenses are very open and sometimes people are a bit reluctant. Do you have any thoughts around that? Because I think that your reflections here about the richness of the media and biases by extension, I think were really interesting. And again, it'd be useful to hear your thoughts about how you would redress that. For instance, reflecting on Corrado's point.
We have had some efforts within the Wikimedia movement to redress this problem. The first was to conduct photo walks. So you organize a group of people in your community and you go to perhaps an area with some cultural significance and take photos as a group, and then you can upload them together to Wikipedia. We also have GLAM projects. GLAM stands for Galleries, Libraries, Archives, and Museums. So there are museums and librarians who, gather so much data from their museum or from their database and put them up on Wikimedia Commons. So the British Museum has had a partnership with Wikipedia, and we have had images from the British Museum on Wikimedia Commons, which could eventually be used for illustrating articles on Wikipedia. I personally have started a GLAM project with my medical school in India, where they donated pathology-related images to Wikimedia Commons, which was also used for illustrating articles. So there are, these collaboration programs between big institutions and Wikipedia, where images were thousands of images are, shared. This is one successful model that we have had. Then we also have projects for mapping which articles do not have images or which particular topic areas do not have images. So we can leave a template, a small message on the talk page of a particular article saying that this article does not have an image. And using that information, you can grab the list of articles that do not have an image. So now you know that these articles do not have an image, so you can specifically focus your effort in bringing those images to Wikipedia. So these are some of the efforts that I know related to the image gap on Wikipedia.
Okay. That's very useful. We're coming to the end. I was just struck by a comment that Doug made here about, which is, I guess, fairly obvious, but it does raise a question to me, that the asymmetry in monitoring, the articles, is a consequence of the crowdsourcing model.
Yes, that is true.
Wikipedia needs bigger numbers of editors working on the smaller articles, and that seems fairly obvious.
Yes.
The question it raises is, should Wikipedia be thinking about incentives for editors to work on these smaller articles? And I ask you that as somebody from that community of editors.
There is conflicting opinion there, but right now we have Wikipedians in residence who actually are paid to edit Wikipedia. But let me explain a little bit more in detail about this. So, for example, the British Museum used to have a Wikipedian in residence who would take the content from the British Museum's archives and use that for, increasing the, for the content on Wikipedia. So the images from the British Museum are taken and they are put on Wikipedia Commons, and these could be used for illustrating the articles. And the Wikimedian in residence gets paid for that. So if you are being paid for editing, then you have to announce it on your Wikipedia user page that you are a paid editor. And as long as you announce that you are a paid editor, you could do some amount of paid editing. It's not exactly advertising. Advertising is prohibited on Wikipedia, but you could actually form collaborations with institutions as a Wikipedian in residence and get paid for the work that you are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I guess there's also worth thinking about other things like their own status, for instance. You know, if you have I don't know if there's I can appreciate that this might not be something that you want to encourage in the Wikipedian community, but, you know, having some kind of lauded status if you have worked particularly on smaller articles or something like that. I'm afraid, though, Nat, that I'm going to have to end it here, because I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, because every time you say something, it generates 2 or 3 more questions in my head. And then you have answers, which is particularly nice. So thank you so much for taking your time from your clearly very busy professional and volunteer life to talk to us today. I also need to say a special thanks to Ricky Gaines and Costanza Caniglia from the Wikimedia Foundation, who've been facilitating this series of webinars. And of course, to the ISC team behind the scenes that have been making this happen: Gabriella, James, Leah, Jane, Zhenya, thank you very much. And of course, to our audience, who are indeed the heart of the conversation. So thank you all. A recording of this will be made available within a few days, so you can check the landing page for the webinar. But enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Nick, and happy birthday.
Thank you.